Negroni and Old Fashioned are usually battling for the top spot on the list of most popular cocktails.
Round 1. Fight!
But is that also what people are looking for online? Not according to Difford's guide. So today we look at a top 5 cocktail from last year, the Amaretto Sour. An 80s era cocktail that burned or faded away, depending on who you ask, but was then brought back by Jeffrey Morgenthaler. We'll hear from the man himself and try his version of the Amaretto Sour. Spoiler alert, it's amazing. And then I'll make it my own way. You know the drill. A bit of cooking, a lot of mixology, and even a hint of pastry art. If you're into experimenting and expanding the horizons, subscribe below and hit the bell icon to be alerted every time when it's cocktail time. Amaretto Sour is said to have been created in the 70s by the US importer of Amaretto di Saronno. The mix of amaretto and lemon soon got the full 80s treatment. Think sour mix and orange juice. So once the cocktail renaissance of the new millennia came about, Amaretto Sour was not really one of those classic cocktails bartenders were digging up. Even with the modern specs of 2 parts amaretto, 1 part fresh lemon juice, a dash of angostura, and an egg white, you're still talking about a very sweet almond drink. But in 2012, a bartender changed the recipe and humbly called it the best Amaretto Sour in the world. That bartender was Jeffrey Morgenthaler, one of the biggest names in the cocktail industry. He's an award-winning bartender and author I happily consider a friend. His bar book is something every aspiring bartender should read, and the signed drinking distilled I got as a birthday present from our director Robe. He has a special place on my bookshelf. I invited Jeffrey to share why and how he created his version of the Amaretto Sour.
Hey Kevin, greetings from the Pacific Standard storage room. Thanks for having me. Yeah, the Amaretto Sour, you have to realize that I am part of 2 generations of bartender. The older generation that made like crappy drinks with like sour mix on the gun and just like, we didn't really care. At the same time, I'm also part of the newer generation that like cares very much about cocktails and uses fresh juices and all this kind of stuff. I have never fit in very well in either generation. When I was making crappy drinks, I wanted to be making better drinks. And when I started making better drinks, I really didn't care for the prevailing attitude that said that some drinks are bullshit. It was like, okay, well, you can have a Remember the Maine, but you can't drink a Midori Sour. You can have a Cognac Sazerac, but you're not allowed to order Long Island iced tea. I sort of had this attitude that if you are the kind of bartender that won't make an Amaretto Sour for a guest, maybe you're not a very good bartender. Maybe you don't know how to make an Amaretto Sour very well. And so I started tinkering with it, you know, adding fresh juice. You need more strength because when you add the fresh juice, you lose a lot of the flavor. And so we need to bolster the alcohol with some cask strength whiskey, a tiny bit of simple syrup, some egg white, and it all came together really quickly. And that's how the Amaretto Sour kind of became a thing. I put it on my website and you know, it was go time from there.
Any additional advice to young bartenders?
I always tell bartenders to take good care of their feet, to get really comfortable shoes. And people think I'm kidding, but like you hit a point when you're about, you know, maybe 10 years into this and you're like, my feet are killing me. I don't know if I can do it anymore. And it's because you haven't taken care of your feet and your, you know, and by extension, your legs and your back. Everything starts at the feet, but you got to take good care of your feet. And I think it's one of the secrets to my longevity, if you will.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Come back anytime. With that, let's make and taste the Morgenthaler Amaretto Sour, before we build on that and make the Kos Amaretto Sour. Like mentioned, we're adding bourbon and syrup. I figured a little extra silkiness can't hurt, so I'm using Library & Co.'s classic gum syrup. This is a 2-to-1 sugar water syrup combined with gum arabic, an all-natural emulsifier derived from an African acacia tree. Before we do anything else, I'll separate the egg white using a Hawthorne strainer. Then let's start with 1.5 ounce or 45 ml of Amaretto, which is a sweet Italian liqueur, typically made from almonds or apricot pits, so it has a distinct almond flavor. To give the cocktail a little extra body, as Jeffrey put it, add 3/4 ounce or 22.5 ml of cask strength bourbon. Follow that with a full ounce or 30 ml of freshly squeezed lemon juice. And since we're using less Amaretto, a teaspoon of 2-to-1 syrup will balance the cocktail. For the frothy head, half an ounce or 15 ml of egg white. To make it easier to measure, I'll give it a quick whisk. Then, instead of a dry shake, I'll emulsify the egg and mix the ingredients with a milk frother, which, as you can see, works great to incorporate air, and there's less messing around. Link in the description if you'd like to grab one. Then add ice and give it a shake to chill and dilute the cocktail. Strain over fresh ice in a low tumbler glass and garnish with the lemon peel and a maraschino cherry. that's the Amaretto Sour as made by Jeffrey Morgenthaler. It's sweet and rich, but it also has the backbone and the balance you expect in a sour cocktail, so I can't argue with Jeffrey and his description of this adjusted recipe. But can we push it a little further, while still keeping the core of the Amaretto Sour intact? We'll try that with Cacao Butter-washed Bourbon and Maraschino cherry syrup candy as garnish. I'll also use two super ingredients, lemon super juice and in place of egg white, super foam, our DIY foamer. I'll link the episodes on how to make them, so let's just make our bourbon and jelly garnish. All you need for the Cacao Butter-washed Bourbon is your bourbon of choice and raw cacao butter. For bourbon, I suggest finding something higher proof. I'm using the 100 proof 4 Roses single barrel, so 50% alcohol by volume. Start by weighing out 40 grams of cacao butter. We use this on the channel for cacao fat washed rum in an inverted white Russian, as well as for making homemade white creme de cacao. To that, we add 330 ml or 11 ounces of our bourbon. You can do this using a jar and place it in a water bath on the stove, trying to keep the temperature low, but a sous vide gives you the vacuum, making sure the infusion is optimal, and the complete control over temperature. We'll set this to 55 degrees Celsius or 130 Fahrenheit and cook it for 2.5 hours. I'll shake the bag a few times during that time. Once it's done, cool it slightly in an ice bath. Then I'll place it in the freezer for the butter to solidify completely. That's how we'll be able to filter out just our cacao infused bourbon without the butter parts. Cut open the bag and pour the liquid through a coffee filter. The leftover cacao butter can be used to make cacao butter syrup, like we did in the hot buttered rum episode, or use it in your next dessert for some added richness. Bottle and label your cacao bourbon, and let's move on to making gummy bears from Maraschino cherry syrup. I love finding ways to use up the leftover syrup from these cherries, and this is a great one. To make Maraschino gummy candy, you'll also need gelatin. I'm using sheets today, and the cocktail time staple, saline solution, or salt. To start, I'll need to soak the gelatin sheets in cold water. I'm using 4 gelatin sheets, and they'll be soaking for about 5 minutes to soften. In the meantime, measure out 40 ml or 1 1/3 of an ounce of Maraschino cherry syrup and add that to a small saucepan. To highlight the flavors in the candy, I'm also adding 6 drops of saline solution. Once the gelatin sheets are softened, squeeze out the water and add them to the syrup. Heat this slowly on low heat and stir the mixture constantly. Be careful not to bring this up to a boil, and make sure you already have your silicone molds ready while you're doing this. That's because when the gelatin is fully melted, and while the mixture is still hot, we need to pour the maraschino jelly in the molds. I'm using a mold for gummy bears, which I think will look nice on the edge of the glass, and I'll link it below if you'd like to do the same. You could also make simple circles and place that on top of the cocktail. Once you fill your mold, place it in the freezer for about 40 minutes or the fridge for 4 hours. And while you're at it, just go ahead and add a Nikola glass in there as well. When that's done, you're ready to eat the gummy bears and make the cocktail. Before we eat them all, let's make the Kos Amaretto Sour. Start with a chilled shaker, discard the ice, then add 45 ml of Amaretto. Amaretto translates from Italian as little bitter. Next up, our Cacao Butter Bourbon, 1 ounce or 30 ml. Let me know what else you think this would work great in, down below in the comments. Follow that with our super ingredients, 3/4 of an ounce or 22.5 ml of lemon super juice, and 1/2 ounce or 50 ml of our homemade vegan foamer, and flavorless egg white replacement, super foam. Lastly, to enhance all of the flavors in the cocktail, 2 drops of 20% saline solution. I think this is nicely balanced, but if you have a sweet tooth, feel free to add a bar spoon of gum syrup. Then, same as before we add the ice, froth up the cocktail and emulsify our foamer with a milk frother. You'll see how much air that incorporates as you're doing this. Then add the ice and shake. Grab the chilled Nikola glass and garnish it by placing our Maraschino gummy bear on the side of the glass. Now double strain the cocktail and let's give this a try. On the aroma, you can already detect cacao notes, pairing nicely with amaretto. It's creamy and has a rich flavor of almonds and chocolate. As far as texture, super foam delivers, and honestly, in a blind taste test, you wouldn't sense the difference here. Maraschino gummy bears are a great replacement to the cherry from the classic version. It adds the finishing touch to the cocktail. So, what do you think, Jeffrey?
It's the best Amaretto Sour in the world.
Well, you've heard it here first. Post the trophy emoji in the comments to let me know you've made it all the way to the bottom of the glass. And to bring it back around to the intro, if the Amaretto Sour was the number 4 most real cocktail on Difford's guide, what were the top 3? It's the Naked and Famous, the Gin Basil Smash, and at number 1, the Pornstar Martini. I've covered the Gin Basil Smash and the Pornstar Martini a while back, both my own way, so let me know if you'd like to see the Naked and Famous on Cocktail Time as well. Until next time, Cheers.